our own IP. We have clients all around the world. We've partnered with USA to bring our system to health ministries in Nepal, Philippines, Zimbabwe, Swatini. And yeah, today we just wanted to share a little bit about our comprehensive fixed asset module. And to tell you all about it, we have none other than our head of project delivery, Manupriya Vijayanga. Manupriya Vijayanga, I think the best way I can describe him, if those of you who have been around on the internet lately, he's our resident chill guy. So I think it's best for me to just hand things over to Manu because he is the best person to show you things. Manu.
Thanks, Dino. Am I audible?
Manu, I feel like your volume is a little bit low. I'm not sure if that's the same for everyone else.
Give me a minute.
I think it should be fine. Yeah,
Better?
yeah, yeah, perfect. Thanks, Manu.
Okay, right. Right. So, hi, everyone. Hope I'm visible as well. So, let's start off with what you can do in terms of your asset management via Intuition. Dino, will you be able to let me share the screen? Dino? Dino, are you there? Or anybody else in the organization panel? My sharing option is disabled.
Hold on, Manu, we're looking into it.
Yeah, meantime, so I'll just brief on what we're going to do, we're going to run through today. So basically, I think pretty much any organization is going to have fixed assets within their operations, unless, of course, you are a
Manu, I
virtual
think you should be
organization.
able to, sorry, I think you should be able to share your screen now,
Yeah,
if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken. All right.
thank you. So yeah, like I was saying, pretty much like unless you're a virtual organization, you're going to have fixed assets that needs to be managed within your organization. So if you take an asset, what defines as an asset is pretty much a particular item that you purchase for a long time usage, which can't be converted to cash in a short period or an immediate period. So within that categories, of course, you have vehicles, plant and machinery, fittings, furniture, those kind of stuff, which basically, I mean, from the smallest organization, you're going to have that from few number of assets, as long as uh, when the context of your operations are much larger, you're going to have quite a lot of assets that needs effective management. So uh, we'll just take you through what you can do in terms of asset management via Intuition. So there are two aspects to this particular webinar in terms of the assets. So one is pretty much how you can register an asset into the ERP system. The second aspect is once you have a registered asset, what you can do about it on Intuition. So if you take the first context of it, there are two ways that you can actually register an asset on the ERP platform. One is, of course, via the purchasing option. So, like any other item that you're going to purchase to your organization, you have the facility to procure an asset via the same purchasing process. That's available for your any other purchasing requirements. So if you're procuring an asset, uh, there are specific criteria that needs to be defined at the level of purchasing the asset, because it's just I would say a few fields of information, because in most practical care situations, the person who is actually purchasing the asset will not know much about it. So basically, what we incorporate here is the user to make sure that only the bare minimum of required information is entered at the level of the procuring. So pretty much you have to define the group asset category as the mandatory requirements here. So I will further down the line explain what actually these group and the asset categories mean in the asset management module. But if you take the procuring process, it's pretty simple: purchase order, purchase invoice. Just make sure that the user that enters the record knows what kind of asset category that the particular asset is falling into and the asset group. In the same context, the other scenario is because you have already a particular item which is purchased and which is lying in your inventory, and then you decide this asset is going this particular item we are going to convert to a fixed asset. That also applies to scenarios such as, when you for example, when you bring down a heavy machinery that needs assembling sometimes. Um, until you finish or complete the assembling process and get that particular machine uh, ready to use, you don't capitalize it as an asset. So you keep the particular components as inventory, and once you convert it to fixed assets at the point uh, that at the point that it becomes useful to you. So in that context, the other option you have is in our inventory module, there's an option called internal order, which is going to facilitate the user again to cooperate to the process of registering an inventory item as a fixed asset. So there's an option called capital WIP, whereas again, pretty much the same context. Small icon here allows you to define what sort of information needs to be captured within the particular assets. So again, I said the same fields appear when you're doing procurement process as well. So the asset group and the asset book are the aspects that you need to make sure that you have covered properly. So once your user does either of these processes, an asset is automatically going to be registered on your fixed asset registry on the ERP system. So what these two processes allows you is on the system, it allows you to keep a track of uh, the source of registering your asset. So if it's a purchasing, you have all the purchasing information of your assets on the system, where you can obtain the information via reports, as well as if your registering mechanism is through inventory item conversion to assets. So that option is also allowing you to keep track of um, what's the history of the whole thing, and then which particular items have been converted to assets. So those two are the approaches that are most commonly practiced, but we also have another aspect of it. So this is a bit more complex scenario again. In order to have this particular process, you of course need to have the project module as one of your usable modules in the system as well. Um, so there are scenarios where, yeah, where an organization performs projects. So, for example, let's say you're constructing a building, a new building that's going to be added to your organization. So the system facilitates to construct the whole building operation as a project in the system. What happens is once you're completed with the construction, it becomes an asset for your organization. So there is a facility where you can originate your construction or the assembly process as a project in the system, do whatever the tracking that relates to the construction time inside that particular project module. But once it's completed, there's a facility where you can actually define if it's going to be an asset at the end of completion. So once your project is complete, the system will facilitate for you to add that component from the project to a registered fixed asset. So that's another element where you can do the registry process. Like I said, it's not common practice that's applicable for everybody, but if you take certain scenarios or certain industries, that's another scenario that you can cover through the system as well. So once you does either of those three scenarios, it lands at a form called fixed asset information. So this is pretty much your organization's asset registry, which basically contains all the information related to your asset master. So in order to describe the functions that are available further once an asset is registered, I'll be taking a particular example as a fixed asset and take you on from there. So as you can see, and if you are already an execution user, you know what this term means, released. So this means the particular transaction is completed. So, or the master data is completed. So what happens when you register the asset from either of those three sources I mentioned, purchasing, inventory conversion, or project conversion, is the asset gets drafted, not released. And then the person who is in charge of the asset module or the finance department, person who actually knows about the particular asset can come to the particular record and then edit it to make sure that you capture all the related information about the asset here, because the person who is actually purchasing or transferring the inventory will not know that information. That's why it's created in a draft mode. Then the particular user can come here and make sure that they've entered pretty much all the information and then release the asset. So I'll just take you through what levels of information you can capture inside the master. Of course, there's a coding sequence, so you can record or you can configure it in a way you want. Description fields to add information according to your liking, and the important part is the grouping, or the categorization. So usually in any organization, you have an asset categorization, which is like a pretty much a standard. I would say in most cases it would be few standard categories like PPE, vehicles, computer equipments, furniture and fittings, and so on. So the reason behind this categorization is, of course, for you to analyze your reports and output information according to the asset category based analysis parameters. Um, and here, basically, if you procure the asset or when I convert the asset, the unit cost is going to appear based on the cost of the item that you procured and the quantity. So here the quantity is indicated as one. So we also have an option where you can register bulk assets. The meaning behind that is uh, a motor vehicle you register as one quantity, one asset. It has a unique code. Let's say you have a setup of 5 chairs and a table. You have an option where you can register each chair and the table as independent assets, that coming up to 6 independent assets. Other scenario is you can register the whole setup as one asset containing 6 items. So the quantity of the bulk asset is 6. So either option is facilitated by the system. But if you register a particular asset as a bulk with multiple units within that, then of course the depreciation and whatever the functions that later comes into the assets context is also applied as a bulk. Right. So you can have the purchasing information here. Also, a certain other categorization. Of course, you can have a barcode management process, like basically you can print a barcode to each of your assets through the system. You can configure the barcode, print it for asset tagging purposes as well. And there is a facility where, of course, this again is not a standalone function of the asset module, so I just briefly explain it. It links with our service module as well. If like you can rent out your assets as hired items, so that's why this hired flag is there. You can assign a rate configuration, and then you can have a hireable asset as well. Of course, that function is out of the asset module. It comes in the service module. And once you go to the details tab, you have quite a lot of other information that you can record in the system, like manufacturer details, insurance details. Pretty much what's the advantage here is you can have reminders, emails, and alerts based on any renewals that you need to do. Like, for example, if your insurance is about to be renewed, you can have a notification or an email maybe 1 month back. So the relevant users can be aware of what they have to do. And then there's a deployment information. So that basically means where your asset is physically sitting right now. You can create your locations within your organization in the system, and you can select pretty much where a particular asset is. And you can also assign a person who is responsible to taking care of the asset, and get their contact details here as well. And then the next section is the maintenance. So as you all know, assets require maintenance. If it's like pretty much heavy machinery or production machinery or those kind of things, maintenance becomes quite critical. So maintenance, again, there are two ways that you can do it. If you take the fixed asset module as a standalone operation, then you can have last maintenance records, and you can keep a track of the next maintenance date of the system. Uh, Going down further, uh, yes, this facility is linked with the service module. You can have service level agreement sort of. It's basically like internal SLA where you can keep track of when a particular asset needs to be serviced and how many times it needs to be serviced. Especially if you're a large corporate organization and you have a separate department who is responsible for servicing assets, then they can have their own SLAs. When the other departments request for a service also, of course they can refer the SLA and come back, and then uh, they can maintain what's being actually done versus what's in the service level agreement. So that's the reason why there's a service level agreement that you can link here. Um, and as I said, it's covered under a separate module, which maybe you'll come across on a later webinar. Um, then This is where, like I said, if you look at the standalone asset module, you can schedule your preventive maintenance. This is simply you keeping a record of maintenance that needs to be done on regular intervals. Again, through the system, you can get the necessary alerts and the emails, or even if you have integrated SMS functionalities, those as well. So this again, in terms of the maintenance aspect, facilitates for the maintenance providing personnel to keep track of what needs to be done in terms of the asset scheduling their maintenance. Because if you're an organization who's into production specifically, so your production machinery also falls under the assets. And of course, maintenance means the machine will not be able to be utilized for a particular period, which impacts your production planning and the production processes. So, you can schedule this information in sync with the other operational areas. So you make sure that you don't disturb the day-to-day operations in terms of your maintenance cycles. So basically, that's on the maintenance aspect of it. So uh, in terms of the information that you can record inside the asset registry and the maintenance aspect. Uh, so I hope you're clear on those parts. So of course you can add an image as well. So in particular image format you can upload and keep. So that's one aspect of it. Recording information in the particular against the particular asset, plus having the maintenance aspect covered. Um, then I will move on to the I would say the final part of what's available on asset management, that is the finance and accounting perspective. So if you take any particular asset, there is accounting standard policy that the organization is supposed to follow. So what happens there is there are financial actions that you need to take with respect to recording the bookkeeping entries. The most important one is the disposal, sorry, the depreciation. So every asset needs to be depreciated according to the company and the accounting policy. So you can define the financial criteria that's going to impact to this account related transaction generation here in the fixed asset itself again. So here you can see there's a tab called disposal and depreciation. So under the depreciation, first of all, you can decide whether the asset is actually going to be depreciated, because some assets don't depreciate. They're going to be amortized, or the value is going to be uh, increased, not decreased. So first thing, you can decide whether it's depreciable or not, and then based on that, with the depreciable asset, there are two standard ways of depreciating. That's the straight line and the reducing balance method. So you can decide either of those. And then the depreciation interval, you have monthly, quarterly, and yearly depreciation. Again, the most common practice is the monthly depreciation. So once you define this information, the system will basically keep track of uh, the current value, the net book valuation of the asset. And if you take an asset, so as I said in the very beginning, it's for long-term use. So every asset based on their categories has a defined useful period. So once you record the asset itself, you can decide what's the useful life of the particular asset. You don't need to enter this information one by one. This is where the asset grouping comes in. So you can define this information to a group of assets, and then you can link the group to the asset, so the relevant configuration will apply. So if you have only 5 groups, you need to do this 5 times for the groups. If you have 1,000 assets inside that 5 groups, it will apply to all the 1,000 assets automatically. So useful life is defined here, and then you have the acquisition date. So again, there's a policy, again, a company-based policy that you can decide when you purchase an asset, if it has a taxation. So are you going to capitalize the asset with tax or without tax? So you can do it both ways on the system. And the acquisition value is the value of the purchase or the conversion cost of the asset. And accumulated depreciation, you can always see how much depreciation has been accumulated the asset so far, and then you can see the current value of the asset. Of course, salvage value means the scrap value that you expect once you dispose the asset. So in the same tab here, you can see a summary of the purchase information if you procure the asset. And as I said, the disposal, the depreciation tab shows the depreciation policy as I explained earlier. And then there's a disposal policy. So disposal comes into play once the lifetime of the asset is completed. You either dispose the asset by selling it or writing it off. So some of these terms might come as technical because they are accounting terms. So, but there are standard accounting terms which anybody who's managing the assets directly would know. Um, so disposal policies, again, there's a couple where you can exclude the depreciation incurred for the disposal year, or whether you can include that. And then when it comes to depreciation, so if you have a lot of assets, it becomes a nuisance to actually calculate and post depreciation every month. If you have 10,000 assets, it becomes like impossible. So what is allowed here is as you can see, there's a calculation basis which shows as auto. So the system will calculate the depreciation entries for you with the policies you set up here. So if you have 1,000 assets, you have a depreciation entry posted every month if your policy is monthly. So 1,000 journal entries are going to be posted, and the system is going to create them for you, and then you can schedule them and plan them when they are supposed to be posted. For example, if you want the entry to be posted on the last day of every month, you can configure it like that under these schedules. I'll show you how the schedule is set up as well. It's actually the administration function impacting this. So schedules in the system can apply to many functionalities across the system. So what we're talking about is on liquid context to the asset depreciation. So like I said, so it can be created, if you take the asset context, if you want it to be monthly posted, month, you can select month here, and it can even give the day count, 31st of every month, or else if you want to give it in the context of last day of every month, just will create that entry for you. So that's basically the aspect where you can auto generate a very tedious data entry task, I would say otherwise. So depreciation is one aspect of the accounting part in terms of the asset. So there are the few of the others as well. So other functionalities include revaluation. So revaluation is another standard financial accounting practice. So if you feel that the asset valuation is not up to the I would say the current market value, or there's an economic situation in the country. For example, I mean, like during the crisis situations, everything was revalued. So there's a revaluation functionality on the system where you can revalue your current net book value of your asset uh, to a new value. So again, there are two standard practices within that as well, which is called elimination and proportional. What happens in elimination is it completely clears off the current net book value. You can give a new useful value for the asset, and then you can assign all those policies that you assigned earlier here, and then proceed with the new revalued amount and the remaining lifetime period. The other option is the proportional method, which is what's meant by this is the current accumulated depreciation. I mean, it's depreciation that's incurred so far is not removed. It's taken into a proportionate adjustment, including the current net book value of the asset. The difference between these two mainly is one pretty much gives a whole new net book value, excluding the accumulated depreciation. The proportion that takes into play a proportional amount from the current accumulated depreciation and then comes up with the net book value. So again, standard accounting practices. Then, of course, you have the function of disposal. So disposal comes into play um, when you are completely utilized the asset's usefulness. So as I said, there are a couple of methods, again, standard ones, where you can write off the asset. So you select it, you apply it immediately, asset is going to go to a disposal state. So what happens when you're disposing an asset is based on the current value, net book value of the asset, and if you have added a salvage value, so based on the difference between those two, there is a gain or a loss on disposal, which is going to be posted to your accounts. The other method is, of course, you can sell the asset. So if you're selecting to sell a particular asset through this option, what the system does is it's gonna direct you to the sales module, and there's a transaction called free text invoice. But it's pretty much an invoice as you see on everyday practice, like the sales invoice. The that this particular transaction will be automatically generated with the asset coming into this line item grid, where you can give a sales value, any discounts, applicable taxation, and proceed as a usual sales invoice. Can select the customer information on this section, and based on the sales value and the net book value of the asset, the system will actually identify what's the gain or loss of the disposal and then post the entry accordingly. So that's basically the other way where you can dispose the asset of. And those are the finance related functionalities. And there's a few more. Um, Assets don't sit at one place for the whole lifetime. There are scenarios where it moves from one physical location to another, maybe ownership transfers and all like that. So the asset transfer function actually allows you to transfer it across three parameters. One is department to department. So business unit means departments. So from an existing department, you can transfer it to another department. Um, and from one physical location to a new physical location. Or the other option is the responsible owner transfer. So the current owner will come into display here, and then you can select a new one and then hand the ownership over to them as well. So either of those three transfer scenarios, you can carve out the transfer option. The advantage here again, like you can see the whole movement of the asset, where it was, where it went, and who owned it during particular time periods. Uh, make sure that the whole traceability is there on from the day you purchase the assets until disposal, where it actually moved across your organization. And the final option here is the asset split. So asset split option comes into play. That means like if you want to take off a component of a particular asset, uh, and then you want to register it as a new asset on the system, then you can use the asset split functionality. Sometimes you register if it's like let's say a large scale machinery as a single asset. Sometimes later onwards, you may realize you can break it down into several separate components and track them separately. So you can use the split function to break those down into independent assets and proceed with the other asset management functionalities. So the traceability, as I said earlier, if you take physical movement, even if you take the registration process, whether it's purchased or converted from projects or converted from inventory, you have the traceability there. And then if you go to this FA book history tab, it will show you like a track record of what happened to your assets net book value from the day of purchase until the current date. Pretty much every adjustment that took place against that value will be shown here along with the date and time. So even on the financial aspect, you will be able to see what happened by coming to this tab. So that's the basic elements that you can follow on the system. But uh, this is not a complex module. It's quite a simple module. But if you're doing all those functionalities outside of a system, not even ours. Like if you're doing it on Excel, that's I don't like it doesn't have to specifically say like it's going to be a tedious work. So every month end or maybe year end, you have to go through all these information in Excel and other files, and you have to calculate the depreciations and everything. So uh, what the advantage you get here is you know you can segregate the operation to the relevant person actually. So the person who is registering or purchasing the asset just have to do that job as a purchase person, and then it automatically comes into the asset module. Then the person who is in charge of the asset can log into the system and do his part. And then the accounting personnel, when the time comes, can come into the asset module and do their own, rather than if you're actually doing it manually. End of the day, pretty much everything comes into the accounts or the finance department's responsibility in most cases. So yeah, and also you could say, I hope you could identify like what are the other areas that you can uh, get an advantage if you systemize the whole process rather than using a manual practice. So pretty much those are the aspects that we were planning to cover on this particular module. Uh, I would be glad to take any questions or any further clarifications required on any of the functionalities that we went through. Um, yeah, over to you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Manu. Like you mentioned, if there's anyone that has any questions, please feel free to raise your hands. We'll unmute you and you can ask your questions. Kaushal, you asked a question.
Joshua, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm not sure how we can get Kaushal to ask the question, but Kaushal, if you can hear me, you can drop your message, your question onto the Q&A section, and I think Manu will be able to answer it from there. Okay, so Kaushal,
Oh,
Manu
yeah,
Kaushal has asked, yeah,
yeah.
can we use barcoding systems to manage assets?
Yeah, of course. So I said earlier that you can actually generate a system defined barcode, and then you can paste it as a sticker on the asset. That's I mean, like if you there are two aspects to it. One is the application that we displayed just right now, the fixed asset module on the ERP. That's where you can you have the inbuilt feature where you can define a barcode and you can treat it as a sticker. Going further than that, if you're talking about verifying the assets, so like there are processes like asset verification via scanning and all that. So we do have a mobile application that comes as an add-on for the Intuition, where you get the facility where you can scan the barcode and do the asset verification process as well. If your uh, request goes to that extent as well. Once you scan the particular barcode, the application will show you where currently the asset is at the moment residing, and then you can do the processes like transferring operations through the mobile application itself. You do the barcode scanning process. So that extent the application is there. Of course, we'll be able to do separate sessions on different functionalities and applications on the system. So you may see it on on one of the future webinars as well. Or like if you want further information, you can reach our sales team on that as well.
Okay. Do we have any other questions present here today? Is it Kaushal again? Kaushal, can you drop your question onto the chat like last time? Can we purchase one module separately and link with a different ERP?
Yeah, again, yes. So the reason is our ERP is anyway modular based, but uh, when you take this fixed asset module, that's something that you can run actually standalone. So it doesn't have to be Intuition ERP following the asset module. If you're using some other ERP, or if you're already using a different system for your operations, maybe your accounting packages and all that, um, our fixed asset module is fully capable of integrating with any standard application out there. So you can, if you want our system only for asset management, you can purchase it and then you can integrate with whatever the current software that you're using as well.
Uh, Thank you, Manu. We have another question as well. Prabhash has asked, will there be more sessions like this for other functions such as administration, management, etc.?
Yeah, of course. So we are planning to keep this ongoing, maybe once a month. So yeah, you'll see us coming across with different functionalities and different modules.
Yeah, I think I can add to that as well. Once a month is the schedule for our webinars, and we'll be coming up with our own content. But we'd like to know what you'd like to hear from us, any modules, any features you'd like to get to know. So if you do have any, we'll send a follow-up form where you can fill it and let us know what you'd like to hear from us. So are there any more questions at the moment? Okay. I don't think there are. So I once again like to actually, is there something? No, I don't think so. All right. I'd just like to thank everyone who attended this webinar. I think we had a great turnout today, and I hope everyone here got to learn something and got something to take home today. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Manu, for enlightening us on this fixed asset management. All right. Hope to see you guys soon, sometime around next month, maybe.
Yeah, thank you everybody as well.